Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with Peter Yu. Today we're going to talk a little bit about precursor skills, period. Precursor skills.
Right.
Before you throw, before you do judo, precursor skills, things that don't get really talked about so much, right? People focus on Taio, people focus on Uchimara, the actual throw, the technique. There's a lot of precursor skills going before. Right?
Yes.
So we have to talk about that.
Yeah, so you're big on that whole context, whole idea
Yes.
of the context. So
Context,
I guess
yeah.
it's precursor skills are related to that. Is it?
Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about what they are exactly? Seems like they're not just the setup. They're not just the setup.
There's a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. There was this Georgian guy who was very, very good at the Georgian position in a right side versus right side setting, right? He came to my dojo. He was unbelievable in that position. He was like a junior national champ over there in the country of Georgia, not Georgia, the state. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If he gets to that Georgian position, he knows
Right.
that position more than me, right? And
Right.
if one person proactively has the Georgian over the near side shoulder and grabs the belt, one person, I like to call it Georgian A versus Georgian B, because the
Right.
receiving side is a specific position involving a specific skill set as well, right? So the strategy is different
Right.
if one person has a Georgian.
Right.
Kind of
right.
like a zero-sum game, right?
Right. Because it's more like how to even get to the position you like and things like that.
Yeah, a little bit of that. So it's like
Right.
this guy's whole strategy with me is to get there.
Right. Right.
He has Harai, he has Ouchi, he has the Cabarelli, right? He's very good at that.
Right.
And I'm not too proficient in this position, right?
I see.
Yes, I could grab the tricep, try to lift him.
Yeah.
Right? That's like sort of my one thing that I'm like pretty good at, like the uranage. If you guys haven't seen me uranage my teddy bear, it's on my YouTube.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like, I'm not like great in that position, right?
Right.
I could handle my own, but he's very good.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where he wants to be. So the precursor skills to him throwing me with anything, right? Like one of probably 3 moves that he does really well from there, right?
Right.
And they link together. They have a lot of good synergy there, right? So the precursor is to get to that position in the first place.
I see.
So
You
the
see-
skill set of getting there.
It seems like you first need to first need to develop your throws, like your arsenal of throws, before kind of diving into precursor skills, because
Yes, yeah, you do. You
Yeah.
definitely. It's kind of like together, right? And people argue like, should I do 1,000 Taitoshis today, or should I work on grip fighting?
right.
Right. Even then, it's like you have 2 examples, but there's a lot in between too, right? A lot in between.
It's more than just precursor skills are more than grip fighting,
There's a lot of factors always going into this stuff, you know,
Right.
and people neglect the fact that strength does matter, being strong does matter, you know, and you don't have to be the strongest person in the world to do judo, definitely not.
Right.
But you need some sort of standard level of strength, right? Standard level of coordination. If you're not coordinated at all, then you can't do it. You give the most extreme example, like if you can't walk, you can't really do judo.
right.
You know,
So
like you can, like you could do other forms of judo, but like
Right.
I'm talking full blown randori and trying to
Right.
hit somebody with a taitoshi.
so it's even like fitness. You would you say fitness?
Fitness is a
Basically,
component.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
Definitely. So there's a lot of stuff going into it. And
Right.
you're right. You have to have good technique, which is the taitoshi or the haraigoshi or whatever throw that you want to use.
Right. So it's a wide range of skills. So I mean, we already have a episode dedicated to fitness
Yeah.
for grappling. So let's kind of assume that we have fitness taken care of. So how do you recommend people start with, like with in terms of precursor skills? Yeah, where do we start?
I think so. It's difficult if you're going into a dojo, right?
Right.
And you have the old school dojo, which practices 2 hours, and you spend 30 minutes doing uchikomi, 20 minutes
Right.
doing break falls and other stuff like shrimping and just drilling period of like, right? And you're just kind of going through the motions of that. And then maybe
Right.
do some randori. Like that's
Right.
really not going to help you really develop because you're not putting any focus on it, right? You have to have like
Right.
deliberate training where it's like, oh, this is where I need to be. So you're going to have this like mind map of like, these are all the things that I need to get good at in order to maximize my judo skills in a competitive setting.
Right.
Right. And then you have to sort of fill the gaps a little bit, and then like highlight each areas to train. You know what I mean?
So what
I
are
just
those
saw-
areas? Yeah.
Oh, for instance, I'll give you another example. Like I just saw Jimmy Pedro do a video on his Instagram. It's like, okay, right versus right, very common position, left hand post, right? Right. Actually, Jimmy's lefty, so he did it reverse. It's left versus left with the right hand pose.
Right. Oh, okay.
So he's like, yeah, so this is what you want to do. These are some of the options. And then we're just going to start drilling from here. It's going to be like a live drill. Okay. Fighting for that sleeve, trying to gain dominant position from this specific position. Go.
Right.
That's a very, very, very small section of the entire exchange of judo. Right. And if you look at an entire match of judo, there's many, many different exchanges. Right. Exchanges where I'm talking like, oh, me and you come out, bow, we start right, left. I have dominant. I go for Ouchi. We go to the ground. Newaza, something happens. Mate. That's one exchange. Okay,
Right.
Start back up. We're fighting. Peter goes for 8 drops and nagis in a row. Right? All right, mate, right? That's exchange. We go out of bounds, right? So many exchanges in the match, and even within that one exchange, right? There's a lot going on there. Who takes the first hand on? Am I trying to fight right side? Am I trying to fight left side? These things. And then if you're fighting same-sided fighters, right versus right, that hand posting on the back shoulder, that's very, very, very common.
Right. So you want
like
to
training that specifically, right? I saw that video. I was like, this is good. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
I see. So you want to, so you recommend dedicating a certain period in practice for situational drilling. So
situational training, right?
Right.
Because it's very important you train. I'll give you an example. I read this book, right? It's called Peak. It's about deliberate training. And, everyone has this mindset of like, 10,000 hours that was started by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, right? And the new sort of research suggests like you want to really focus. Like if you're playing tennis, right? And you have a very weak high backhand, right? What is it called? The backhanded hit? I don't even know.
I think it's backhand. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
backhand
so.
or whatever. So if you're just playing tennis and I'm just playing tennis with you every day, 3 hours a day, how many times am I going to encounter that exact stimulus?
Not much.
5 times, 6 times, right? Now all of a sudden it's like I hit it and then it goes over here, it goes over there, and I get success with it once, 1 out of 5 times. I've trained it 5 times. Now I get a tennis coach and he's like, listen, man, I know you want to sit here and just blow through the serves and like hit your forehand and all that stuff, but you suck at the high left backhand, high backhand. So we're just going to do that for the whole practice. And I'm like, really? Right? And now it's like I'm hitting the ball in this high backhand in my weak position and just working on that specifically for 1,000 times. All right, so now I've encountered that exact same situation 1,000 times. As opposed to like if I just played tennis 3 hours a day, 5 times per playing tennis, it's like that's going to take 200 sessions for me to get that.
It's not as efficient.
It's not as efficient. So it's like you want to be able to train some of this. And yeah, I leave it up to my guys a lot of times. Hey, work on stuff that you need to work on, kind of.
Right.
And I'm not as explicit. And, sometimes when you say that, people just kind of go like, yeah, so what do you want to get for dinner tonight? I want to get some chicken or whatever after practice. Right. So that's sort of the training. Yeah.
So then, so that was going to be my question. Like, how do you know what to train, like those specific situations? Like, do you just like try to remember what you encounter in randori or stuff like that, like what you're struggling with, positions you're struggling with?
Randori is always good. You have to always do a little randori. Not always, but like you want to do a lot of randori because it's you're a science guy. It's like data collection, right? You have these theories, you work on it, you train, you have these algorithms, right, Peter?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have to test it. Test it. So you have to be in a place where you could sort of mindfully sort of remember and do, right? And I suggest, right, you have to be able to go with everybody. And I talked about this. You have to be able to go with the black belt, you have to go with the brown belt, you have to be able to go with the green belt. And then going with people who aren't going to take your head off is nice because now you're not fearing for your life. Now you're not in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, it's like you can't really remember anything. Everything becomes a blur.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when you interview people who had some traumatic accident or something like that, it's like, what happened? It's like, I don't know. The deer came out of nowhere, and right?
Yeah.
So, mindfully practicing, right? And training with everybody. And then when you're capable, right? You have to be able to turn it on and off like the competitive switch. Like, I'm going with Peter. He hit me with this last time. Today, I'm going to try to beat him. Like, I'm just literally trying, not like physically, mangle him, but like, I'm going to try to competitively win this match. And you have to have rounds like that. And you have to have rounds like, hey, I'm going to go with someone who's a little bit lighter than me so I could be mindful. Because the risk of this smaller opponent who's not as skilled as I am putting me on my head is very low. So I'm going to be like, okay, work this position, dominant position. He's trying to fight out of it. What is he doing right? What is he doing wrong? I'm going to put myself in weaker position. Let's just say right versus left. He has the elbow in. Okay, how do I attack from here? Okay, I got to slip this elbow out. How do I do that? I'm trying to do it. I can't really do it. Goes to side, slip it out. Doesn't work. I go for a soda. I fake it. Stuff like this.
And then
mindful training.
And you identify weaknesses in your game, and then you go back to the drilling.
Yeah. And that exact same example, it's like, okay, you do randori, and now all of a sudden you have these ideas, right? Now you have to kind of like do it in a way where after practice, hey, can I borrow you for a second? Like, all right, we were in this position, this elbow was in, I was trying to side, did you know what I was doing? Most people are kind of not aware, so it's okay, but it's like, all right, let's figure this out, and then you go back and try it.
I see.
Right? It's not going to work on a black belt ever. So it's like when I was trying to pick up Tomonage, obviously I'm not going to throw a white belt, but they're going to land on their head.
Right.
But it's like I'm going to try it on the green belts first.
Right.
If it works on the green belts consistently, then I'm going to try it on the brown belts second.
I see.
You know what I mean? Little by little, right? Little by little, so I like progress. Like, so all of my techniques kind of have like a belt system in my mind.
I see.
Kind of an interesting way to put it.
The green belts, the universal practice dummies.
Kind of, yeah, because they're good enough.
Right.
To where they can put up a good fight and they're good body and they know how to fall. So it's like they're a little bit, right? That's the sort of training grounds, you should live with the green belt. I know sometimes people are like, oh, I work out a green belt. But that should be a best round. That should be the most insightful round a lot of the times.
Right. I totally agree. And also, it's good for them too, because you're like, they get to go with higher belts, and then they are exposed to new things and then discover what they need to work on, the precursor skills.
Yeah. And if you're competitively going against a green belt where you're just housing them the whole time and slamming them and throwing them around like crazy, like they're just going to get discouraged. They're not going to have any fun. They're not going to think that they're progressing. So it's like when you go with them and you put yourself in bad positions, like losing position right versus left, losing position right versus right, and you're like, oh man, so now they feel like they could kind of throw you. And you're trying to figure out, attacking from losing position. Do I try to get out? Do I go for a bailout throw, or do I try to improve position?
Right.
And then like sometimes, I'm looking just to get in the bad position so I can bail out of the techniques. Whether it's Tomonage, Sumigeshi, drop Seanagi. And I play a little game with myself. It's like, is this person going to be able to anticipate? Right. And then a George Wood, every time he goes for dominant position, I a lot of the times go for Tomonage, Sumigeshi, drop Seanagi, and then sometimes he'll guess right, and I go for Tomonage, and he like slips the leg and then pins me. Right, that happens.
Nice.
Yeah. Right.
So,
but I'm working on that though. Yeah. I'm working on that specific thing. You know what I mean?
So deliberate situational training. So what are some other? So we kind of talked about positional precursor skills, I guess, right? And what are some of the other things? Maybe like, because a lot of times when people think about precursor skills to a throw, maybe they'll think about kuzushi. Like, does that play into this? Your idea?
Yeah, kuzushi is almost part of the technique.
Right.
And getting to the kuzushi, people think kuzushi like, oh, I have to pull this person like that.
Right.
And now they're off balance, right?
Right.
So that's what people think, but there's a lot more to that, right? Because, if you look at it like a misdirecting attack where it's like he thinks I'm going to go for here, but I go there. So if he thinks I'm going here, he's going to shift his weight this way. So now automatically I could just kind of go into that position without actually having to do much with my hands.
Right.
Or if he's stepping out of a technique and now I could sort of attack that reaction, right? That's sort of a common thing that people say now, attacking the reaction. Right. So those two things are also kuzushi, but they're not kuzushi sort of in the traditional sense. When people think kuzushi, they're like, oh, kuzushi. You know what I mean? And it's very hard to like off balance someone just like this with your arms, even right? It's difficult.
Right. Because it requires a lot of strength just to off balance a resisting opponent.
Yeah.
So you need
to. So kuzushi is like sort of part of the technique, and that's close to the actual throwing. Right. So if you look at the entire context of the match, right? The most important thing, not the most important thing, the first thing that sort of you encounter as a precursor skill is putting that first hand on, right? That first hand
gripping,
and it matters. And it's like, yes, it's grip fighting, but that first point of contact is a very, very important factor because whoever puts their hand on first and what they know what they're doing, right? And if I could sort of guess what you're looking for also, right? And it doesn't change much. If you're right-sided and you do most of your turns this way, and I already know this, right? There's certain hand positions that are going to be very useful to me.
Right.
So that first point of contact is important. And then, right, the return, right? It's almost kind of like, I don't want to say chess, right? Because it's like an overused analogy. It's like, everything's like chess. It's like chess. Like, okay, yeah, everything's like chess. Great. But it's like, I put my hand on first, and then you're going to put your hand on also. Right? And then at the very beginning of the grip fighting match, there's almost always like one hand on versus one hand on. And someone gets there first, always, almost always. Right? And it's kind of like MMA or boxing. It's like, do you see sometimes that two people punch each other and knock each other out at the same time? You do see that, but it's very rare, right? It's very rare. Obviously, with grip fighting, there's a lot less consequences in the beginning of that just first contact because you're not getting punched.
Right.
The person's grabbing.
Yeah.
So that happens, right? And then sometimes you just go with one hand, and sometimes the Japanese do this, like one hand, third exchange, boom, two hands on immediately, right? And people do this, and that's sort of a skill in its own to be able to manipulate that timing difference. Right? Am I going circling to the right, circling to the left? All these things matter. What is your lead leg, right? Do you switch sides? Which is your more stronger side? Some people go both ways, right side, left side, right? It's like, what is your more dominant side? Like, you're coming out as a lefty, but you're really a righty, right? Once I'm able to identify these patterns, then I could, right, adjust accordingly. Right.
So it's almost like I could even say the precursor skills start even before the gripping. Like you kind of mentioned it, but you have to try to figure out you need the skill to figure out your opponent almost, like what would be the better grip strategy and whatnot.
Yeah. For me, the most overlooked precursor skill, right, is when I go into a judo tournament and I figure out who I'm fighting first, and I watch them do uchikomi.
Right.
And then do a right sanagi, fake sanagi, kochi, right taitoshi, right? And then they do one sumi, and I'm like, okay, like taking notes. And that's like kind of a precursor skill too, right? So now you know what their weapons are.
Right.
Now the question is, can they string those techniques together well? Right? And do they know how to grip fight and be in dominant position?
Right. That's why I guess you need a coach when you go to a tournament, so that
because if you just go out there blind and then just try to put two hands on and start ripping and roaring, you're not really taking into account the other person at all.
Right.
And there's something to be said about that, right? If you have a very like narrow game where it's like anytime anything happens that veers from that, you're able to like physically force it and funnel them into that particular range, right? Then you don't have to worry about it too much.
Right.
Right?
But that's hard to do, though.
It's hard to do. It takes a long time.
Right.
You could take two routes. There's some crazy athletes where they could be in losing position, but they could sort of force big techniques. They're just big, strong, athletic, and fast. Right? Like a super explosive athlete. I've seen this before. I was watching this girl from France or something go with like a Ukrainian girl, and the girl was just so explosive. Like, she was being out-gripped every time. But she would just like rip into an osoto so fast and so strong that like she would like tip the person over. It's like, wow.
Right.
Like, it can be done. Right?
But there are more effective ways, I guess, especially for hobbyists. Like it.
Yeah. And then it gives you longevity, right? You could be safer because you're attacking from a better position, which means you don't have to defend techniques with your entire body.
Right.
If you have good dominant position, you can just defend them with your arms.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying go out there and stiff arm your opponent, right? I'm saying fight for position first, and then you kind of defend using your arms.
Right.
So there's grip fighting. That's one precursor skill. Right. And then there's positional adjustment.
Right.
The Japanese are really good with it. They don't really come out and explicitly grip fight. They don't. They don't do like, right hand camped out at the thumb at the base of the lapel, or lead hand, offensive, defensive hand, and then adjusting here and moving here, and then hand posts and fighting for the sleeve. Like, they don't do any of that. They go put two hands on and go, right? But there's a lot of nuances there because once people are linked up, two hands versus two hands, right? They fight from there. They like slowly squeeze one hand or cut one hand and then adjust one hand and shake the lapel by trying to take the person's control off the arm.
I see.
They do lots of nuanced movements, right? Slight adjustments to the right, slight adjustments to the left. They don't focus too much on gripping. They do these short movements for adjusting, like position, and then they explode into their technique. And those are the people who have, right, the 10,000 uchikomis, 100,000 uchikomis. Like, their specific individual technique is so refined and powerful because it's just, that's what they did their whole life. They spent 15 years doing this.
Right.
So that's sort of their game, you know?
How do we practice that?
Well, you know, you just got to spend a lot of time doing throws, a lot of time on the mat, but you know, it's people don't have that time.
Right.
Most people are hobbyists.
Right.
Most people listen to this are enthusiasts. You know what I mean? So it behooves you to develop these precursor skills like grip fighting, positional fighting, proper setting up of the techniques, right? And then, yes, you have to have techniques too.
Right.
So you have to train all of these things kind of together, right?
Right.
But you have to know yourself first, because if you're a crazy athletic person, right?
You can kind of blow through all this.
Massive, you're not going to have to spend as much time on that actual harai as someone who is not as athletic.
Right.
So you could take your attention and divert it in different places, as opposed to someone who is not as athletic might have to really double down on this actual technique part to even have a threat of throwing someone, because all these precursor skills are useless if you can't actually throw the person because you don't know how to do a taio or senagi or uchimara, right?
It's like the sense the feeling I get is that there are some major points that you want to emphasize, like the grip fighting and the positional stuff, but at the end of the day, it has to be precursor skills are so personalized in a way.
It is, yeah.
It really is. So I guess the best is to try start judo and then learn about your body, what you excel at, what you are not good at, and then try to tailor the training to your strengths and weaknesses, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because I love Uchimara, but I'm short. Right. So, and I'm kind of heavy too, so I fight in a heavier weight class, which means I encounter a lot of taller fighters. So having short hobbit legs against someone who's 6'3", 6'4", it's very difficult to throw them Uchimara. Like, it can be done, and people say like, oh, you just got to get your hips under. Yeah, but that kind of limits it, because now the tall person can do like deep step, lifting Uchimara, right? Like a side step Uchimara, a back step Uchimara, a ken Uchimara. Like, I got all these variety of Uchimaras. But if I'm going against someone much taller, there's really only a few types of Uchimaras that I can really do, right? So now my attack variations have been much more narrowed down. Right? So I have a limited amount of availability for that one specific thing. And like you just said, if you have taller legs, the counter becomes easier. If you're going to step over that Uchimara or stretchy leg or whatever it's called. Or Sakashi it. Right. If you have short legs, it's very difficult to counter it using that countering method. So opportunity for me to counter the Uchimara is also limited. So do I really focus on the Uchimara and like do that, or do I want to kind of adopt a different style of like focusing more on Ippon Seinagi and Seinagis and things like this? And that's like a body type situation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So, I mean, the obvious way to figure this out is to do a lot of randori. I mean, that's like the most obvious way, but do you have any tips on how to be more efficient about figuring out your strengths and weaknesses? Other than just like
randori, having a good coach, having a good guide, and sometimes it sounds ridiculous. Like, hey, you're short, so you're going to do Seinagi. You're tall, so you're going to do Uchimara, right? And, there is some truth to that, and there is some truth to the reverse side of it. Like, oh man, you're really tall. No one's going to expect you to do a drop kataguruma. You know what I mean? So it's like, then you teach them a weak side kataguruma that drops. Now you're very, very, very dangerous, because when you fight other people, they're never going to see that coming. Right? So you have to have an open dialogue with your coach. You have to take a look at yourself, right? Are you athletic? Or do you have good balance? Balance is such a big part of Uchimata.
Right. So it's a cerebral exercise. Like, you have to think.
Cerebral exercise, it's a puzzle. You can't just go out there and be like, hey, taio is the technique of the week. We're all going to do it. Everybody is expected to be as proficient in it because I taught it, right? That just doesn't work, because everyone has different body types, And sometimes when you have 30 people in the room, you kind of have to sort of teach to the middle or teach to whoever you feel like teaching, right? And then sometimes it's like, I have a specific body type.
Right.
Sometimes when I'm teaching something and, I see like a really tall, like we had this kid Christian back in the game, now he's like 6'3", or 6'2", and he's tall, really tall and lanky, right? 200 pounds, like, I'm sure Morote Seinagi something, it's like, it really does not apply to him.
Right.
So like, I'll try to make it my business to like walk by and be like, hey, dude, this is like for me trying to throw you doing this on, right? Maybe if you find someone who's like a giraffe, like 6'7", but like, you're going to have a hard time getting your hips underneath here,
right?
Just so you know. So you can just drill whatever you want.
I see.
I'll do that. You've seen me do that.
Right.
And people aren't expected to drill something that I'm teaching on that specific day. You know, Phil is notorious for that. It's like, hey, we're all doing Ogoshi today. I look over my shoulder and he's doing Sode. You know what I mean? Right? And he's like talking. He's like, I saw this on YouTube or whatever. He's like working on it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I see.
And some coaches are not. Some coaches are like, I gotta do what I'm doing. You know, but I get it.
I was about to ask you about that. Like, how, on the other side, as a coach, like, what would you recommend? And so one thing is be open and just kind of accept that certain techniques are not going to work for everyone. So
but this is the thing. Like, if you don't know enough, you can't make that decision because you just don't know what you don't know. Right. That's like one of my biggest things. You just don't know what you don't know. You know, and I've made that thing before. Like I've said, I can't do this technique because X, Y, and Z. And I fully believed it. You know, for like Uchimara, for instance.
Right.
People always told me, you're too short, man. Like you're fighting 100 kilos. You're fighting guys 6'5", 6'6". Like you're never going to be able to throw anyone with Uchimara. And they were kind of right. Because like on the international circuit, I never threw anybody with Uchimara.
Right.
You know what I mean? Very, very rarely. So it's like, they were kind of right. You know, but if I would have just taken that advice and went with it, I would have never developed that.
Right.
And most of the people that I train with at the dojo aren't that tall. They're not 6'5", 6'6". Right. So then it's like, can I get under them with Seanagi? If I just had a Seanagi, like I wouldn't be as dangerous, right? So, you know, it's like you can't really.
So it's a balance, yeah.
It's a balanced act, and then you have to have a good dialogue with your coach. I think that's really it. And then you have to have a good coach that knows what they're talking about. Right. Because they could always misguide you. You know, here's another example of like a judo-ism. When you're doing ochi, your toes touch the ground the whole time and you draw a circle on the mat. Right? That's like an old thing. And it's like every time you drill ochi, when the leg comes up off the ground, coaches used to be like, no, you got to keep your foot on the ground. It's like, but every single video that I've ever seen of someone throwing someone ochi, their foot comes off the ground.
Right. It's like in a competition setting.
Yeah, it's like, how do you account for that discrepancy? You know what I mean? It's like your coach has to know what they're talking about first. That's important.
I think when I was working on Uchimara, there was like a big revelation. You know how the traditional way of Uchimara is, you know, your elbow goes underneath the armpit of your opponent.
Was taught like that forever.
Right. So that's how I've been trying to do it in Randori, but it never works. It's better to actually flare up your elbow and then lock in my body type. I was never like strong enough to like really get the kuzushi going like the traditional way. So in the competition style, Uchimara is like flaring up your elbow up and then kind of using the rotation. To drive it through. It's
like kind of, yes and no. And that was a revolution, you're right.
Right.
And I think it was like Judo Mat Labs or something. It was like a very...
that was eye-opening, I remember. Yeah.
It was like an esoteric, like in the middle of nowhere, like Judo channel. Right. Guy like did like a Judo analytics video. Like, how come? Right. And then it just kind of went viral. Everyone watched it. Right. Like, oh my God, he's right. He's saying something interesting, you know, and it became this new thing. But it's very true. The elbow does go up, but it depends. It really depends. You know what I mean? If the person's at an angle like this and you go in Uchimara, you want downward force so the person can't bring their posture back up. Right? So initially the movement can be like pull forward and then stuff. But if their head is already lower than yours, then it's like you go down like this and stuff the head. Right. You know what I mean? Because if their posture is lower and their body is lower than yours, it's very difficult to get the elbow underneath to get your hips underneath. Right?
Yeah.
But, you know, it can be done that way, too. It can be done with the elbow wedged underneath the armpit, especially where there's a height difference. Right. So it's not, you know, when people saw that video, it's like everyone thought elbow in the armpit. It's like, oh, my God, elbow doesn't go in the armpit. Elbow goes up. It's like, no, it's both. It's both. You see both, right?
Suzuki threw a tall Polish guy like that, just the traditional way, I remember. I think it was Keiji Suzuki. Yeah.
So it depends on the person's height. Yeah. You know, person's height, how they're reacting, right? How many different types of Uchimara do you know?
Right.
You know, you see commonly like the lightweights do like a spinning backstep Uchimara. Right. You kind of like spin away from the movement. Yeah. Right? So it's like there's a lot of different methodologies and a lot of different things. And, you know, that's a precursor skill, like knowing this stuff by, you know, accessing it on YouTube. That's the most amazing thing about this time period.
There's so much
we can watch everything
out there. Yeah.
We could watch every judo match on the circuit now on YouTube. It's incredible. You know, I don't. because I could go down the rabbit hole and spend 8 hours a day doing this stuff. I don't want to, do that. Like, I think there's better uses of my time. But
I kind of did that with my Uchimara, like that elbow thing. And also I started doing the more spinning style Uchimara because for me, I'm not strong enough to like really stuff the head down.
Yeah.
So, to compensate, I just used more of the rotation to get the thing going. And I think it takes time. In my experience, it took years for me, honestly. Like, I kept asking you. You always would give me tips because you knew I was working on my Uchimara and still an ongoing process. So I guess that dialogue is very important. And
it's tough, man.
Yeah, it is.
Flexibility is a precursor skill to that, right? Right. Because you have to be able to get your leg up.
Yeah.
And when the way your hips are situated too, it's like when you lift that leg, sometimes your hip opens out to the side because you're very tight glute medius or something like this.
Right.
So when your hips open to the side, you're not actually going towards the technique anymore. Right? So like balance is also another precursor skill. Can you get the leg up the proper way without compensation from your hips? Right? While keeping your balance, while your hands are doing the right thing. You know what I mean? While picking the right kind of Uchimara. Right? So it's like there's just so many things. You know what I mean? It's very, very... I kind of came up with this analogy the other day. You're going to love it. Hope my listeners love it too. It's like, you ever heard like people say things like, oh, something is like chess, something is like checkers?
Right. People are saying that about, I mean, like based on the difficulty.
Yeah.
Chess is harder than,
Yeah. And I've heard people say like, I don't even want to repeat it. But, okay, I'm going to repeat it. I've heard people say things like, BJJ is like chess, judo is like checkers.
What?
You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah, I've heard people say this.
I've heard the first part, BJJ is like chess.
Yeah. Because in judo, you don't see a lot of this stuff. Right? In jiu-jitsu, you can see it. You could physically look at the thing and be like, this hand goes there, this person goes there. He strips that, looking for back exposure, goes for Delihiva, try and go here. He shifts his balance over there. He bases out here, enter into Ashigurami, blah, 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 blah. It's chess match. Oh, it's chess. Right? Judo, when I was just looking at this Uchimara situation, it looks like two guys are just putting their hands on, right? They like, look like they're, scratching each other and playing a little bit of slap fighting. And now one person just bombs in for Uchimara and Uchimara's good. But there's a lot going on there, right? That's just invisible to the eye, So the best analogy is this. You're going to like
what
this
is
one.
it?
BJJ is like bodybuilding.
Okay.
Right? Judo is like Olympic lifting.
Oh, I see. Ooh.
And it works on so many levels. Right? Because bodybuilding is more glamorous. And there's a lot to bodybuilding. I'm not, making fun of bodybuilding.
It's like diet and
nor
everything.
Nor am I making fun of BJJ.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little bit of a slower pace. So they're a little bit more focused on a lot of other stuff. Right? And you could see it.
Right.
Olympic lifting, you don't see it. It's like lat flexibility.
Right.
Like, if your lats are too tight, you're going to have a hard time being in rack position. Right? It's like, who can see that?
Oh,
right?
Makes more sense as you expand upon it. That's a good analogy. I wonder how people will take
bodybuilders.
Yeah.
We got to clip that and put it up.
Yeah, we will. BJJ is like bodybuilding.
We'll title it, BJJ is chess and judo is checkers. We'll title it that way so everyone gets furious and they click on it. Be very clickbaity.
See, you know how to work the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah. But right, I mean, think about the bodybuilding. It's like, it's like you go here, you go there, you work.
It's very methodical.
It's methodical, and it's you really nerd out about it, right? If you talk to a bodybuilder, I don't know if you know any bodybuilders. They are crazy into they're like super nerdy.
I see.
They train all day. They do the morning and the split, and they go crazy with this stuff.
Like quite regimented, methodical. I guess in a way it's like BJJ. Yeah.
Delahiva guard, Z guard, K guard, donkey guard, this guard, open guard, top position, back down, take. Right, all this stuff, right? You kind of go crazy with this stuff.
Right.
Olympic lifters, you ever talk to an Olympic lifter? It's like, yep, clean
jerk.
Snatch.
Yeah, snatch. Yeah.
Clean jerk, snatch. That's it. 2 lifts.
Right.
It's like, how long did you train today? You can't really train that long, like bodybuilder train 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, like multiple sessions and do a little cardio in the morning and this and that. And it's it's like, yes, I'm not saying Olympic lifters don't train. I'm not saying that.
But it's really hard on your body.
Yeah. Right. This is just technique day, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do right. Mobility, and it's like there's a lot that's invisible. Mm-hmm. Not as glamorous.
Yeah,
a lot more people bodybuild than Olympic lift.
That's even that analogy works even at that level.
And a lot of people dabble in both, right? Bodybuilders do hang cleans. Mm-hmm. Do they not? Right.
That's right.
And, Olympic lifters
cross training. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They gotta.
And then the bodybuilders are like, Olympic lift, they're not jacked. And then the Olympic lifters are like, it's hypertrophy muscle. Right? A little bit of rivalry there.
Yeah, true.
But at the end of the day, they're both lifting the weight.
Mm-hmm. Right? That's like at the end of the day, we're all grappling. Yeah, exactly. Right? Interesting. So so we kind of covered a lot about like the little nuance and all the details and how hard and hard and how wide ranging precursor skills are. So it's hard for beginners to navigate through. Like where to even begin really? Like do you have any tips to people who are just starting out, how to approach this even?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you try to like digest all this stuff, it can be very overwhelming depending on your learning style, right? I mean, have you ever entered into a college course, look at the syllabus, and you're like, oh my Lord, like I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And then, on the contrary, right? Like some people get very excited about having a syllabus. It's like different learning styles.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I see.
I think the most important thing across the board is like, yes, you have to cater to your learning style, but the most important thing is like just being persistent, going back in every single day and being interested. Because if you're not interested, why would you keep doing any of this stuff? You won't. You know what I mean? It's got to be interesting. Like that's the most important thing about any skill acquisition. Like it has to be interesting. You know what I mean? Sometimes like the stimulus is not right. Like they have this like I+1 model. It's like your intelligence +1. Right. And then it's like you're almost always reaching for that +1, which is like sort of interesting. It's like that dangling carrot. It's like, oh, you almost have a soda. Oh, you almost do this guy. Oh, I almost bombed Peter with a Tayo today. You know what I mean? Like it makes you keep coming back. You're interested. Like, how do I get this? How do I get that? How do I get this? Right. So if you don't have the right sort of scaffolding situation, it's very, very difficult to stay in the game. Time in the sport is always sort of the best way. And it always circles back to this one thing. It's like you have to stay healthy. Because if you hurt yourself by going too hard, too fast, you're not going to come back to the dojo. Yeah. Some people do. Some people are like, I want to stay in it. I want to stay mentally engaged the whole time. Right. Most people aren't like that. Most people are like, I hurt my shoulder. Great time for me to just quit. Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, why do you want to go back to the dojo? And it's a constant reminder of what you cannot do now. And it's something that you almost kind of failed at, right? It's like, I wasn't strong enough to do this day. Now I'm hurt. Like I have chronic back pain. Like it's just a reminder of my fragility.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's like people don't want to come back from that.
Yeah.
So it's like being healthy, staying interested is like the two most important factors in whether like a beginner kind of makes it to the next level.
I see.
I think. And all the other things that are available is going to start falling into place. That's my sort of opinion. That's my approach, as opposed to like, here's the syllabus, first point of contact, grip fighting. Is the person right first right? Let's look at this and let's adjust it and figure this out as a puzzle. People have no idea what I'm talking about half the time if I'm doing that.
Right. That's an interesting take, because I actually, when we were recording this episode in the beginning, I thought you were gonna lay out a syllabus, but it seems like
I can.
Yeah, but it's not even.
That only.
Yeah. It
only tells. Interesting to some people.
Exactly. So it's more like, how to stay engaged, how to focus on just showing up, and then eventually you'll pick these things up. Stay engaged with people in your dojo, and then you'll figure these out. Just know that these things exist, right?
Yeah. The more you know, it's like the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And right? You can't even try to know something that you have no clue, like where the structures are at. You know, like to someone who's completely untrained that watches you, it's like two flailing people trying to slam each other. It's like, where's the skill in any of this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes even me, when I watch two green belts scrap like over whatever it is, it's just like, man, is there anything going on? You know, here, like that's not slap fighting and trying to just two dogs just fighting for a piece of meat. Like what else is going on? You know what I mean? Like, is there learning actually happening when this is you know, like when these guys are just like butting heads.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's very difficult. There's a lot of precursor skills and you do have to deliberately train, but you're going to have a good coach. You know, you have to be healthy enough to stay in it to know, right? And the more you know, the better it's going to get, I think.
Right. And
you know?
The point
you
about
find ways to stay interested.
Right. I think having
an interesting sensei like me helps.
Oh, it definitely does. And then another thing about staying interested, you kind of basically summarized it, but I read a book called The Flow, like the key to optimal experience or something. It's called The Flow.
Yeah, flow states.
Yeah. So it's like basically you in the zone. So and then in order to get there, you can actually, you know, kind of frame your environment that way to just basically give yourself a little bit of challenge.
Yeah.
And then by overcoming the challenge, you get the instant gratification. And then you stay engaged and then give yourself a little more challenge and then you can keep this flow going like this. Yeah. So that's if people are interested, that I really like the book. It's based on I think written by a lot of Nobel laureates, like a lot of good research. So
nice.
Another tidbit.
Yeah, that flow stuff is interesting, man. If you could kind of get yourself in that place and you could kind of physically get yourself, like I used to have a bunch of switches, like a ritual that I did pre-tournament, right? And then you switch off one thing at a time, you know? I had another interesting one that I read in like a little planner. It was so dumb, you know, like a diary. It was so stupid that it worked. Yeah. You know, it was like not even it didn't work because it was stupid, but it was so silly that I just kind of like, all right, I'll just tell you. It's like if you ever find yourself getting angry, press the pause button on your forehead. So you could take a pause and you could think about it and take a deep breath. And I was just like, man, this is so stupid. You know,
it's not. I guess
it was so dumb, right?
It's like kind of like it works. It worked for you.
Well, it was so stupid, right? And then I just found myself like pressing this pause. I remember it was like the vice principal or something was getting down on me. He was like screaming at me or something. I think I cut school or something like that. He's like yelling at me. I was getting pissed. I was like about to fire back, and I pressed this pause button, and it was so dumb. Like it kind of made me laugh. And now all of a sudden, like I had this connection with this thing. Right. I do, and it was just like I started doing it. So anytime I was kind of getting aggravated, I would just go like this. And then sometimes I'd be going like this. And it was so stupid, right? But it would always put me in that mindset. And it's like something that, I don't know, you just kind of remind me of that.
It's like a physical cue for you to calm down and step back. And
yeah. So those physical cues, ukemi's like that for the dojo. You do all this ukemi at the beginning. Ich, ni, boom, 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 in like the synchronized way. And, you know, whether you like it or not, right, you enter in the learning zone because right after ukemi,
your body's warm, it's a physical cue.
Warm-up's done. So, like, that sort of acts as a purpose for that. And you're absolutely right, man. Like, if you could hold on to some of these things and make it mean something for you, it could help you. That's another precursor skill.
Yeah. Man, it's not just about the physical activity, I guess. A lot involved. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we talked a lot. Precursor skills. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and, you know, find this helpful. Anything else before we end this episode?
Nope. Thank you very much, everyone. Reach out to me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, subscribe to my channel and all that stuff. And I have a lot of video products, so go check that out. It's in the links.
Right.
And thank you, Peter, for doing this.
Of course. Thank you. And
really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks for listening, guys, and stay tuned for the next episode.